Hi, everyone, and welcome to She Plays the Podcast. I am super excited to be joined today by Kayla Lombardo. She is the lead editor for Softball America and web editor for Baseball America. Kayla, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Like I said, we've been, before we hit record, that we've been following your work and really excited to learn more about softball, especially as Athletes Unlimited started last year, all that good stuff. But take us back a little bit and, how did you get into softball, baseball, and, what led you to be what you're doing today?
So, my tenure in softball goes way back to when I was a little girl, 5 or 6 years old, first started playing the game. But I guess I was first introduced to the bat and ball sports when I was even younger than that. And I followed the New York Yankees through the Yankees heyday back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So fell in love with baseball, fell in love with softball, played throughout my whole childhood, had a bunch of awesome experiences in the game, played college softball at Fordham University, had a great experience there. Then went on to work in the journalism world for a little bit, then went on to coach college softball for a little bit where I got my master's, and then had another opportunity back in journalism with Softball America, Baseball America, and the rest is kind of history.
That's awesome. I'm curious, just picking a few things out of that. What was it like to go from player to coach?
It was tough. Yeah, it was definitely tough. It was a completely different mindset than I had as a player. I think when I was a player, I was so consumed with everything that I could do to better myself to help our team win. And then when I was a coach, I was so focused on the women I was coaching and what I could do to help them to get better, to help the team win. So, complete shift in mindset. But it was good for me to kind of get out of my own head and my own I guess stratosphere of what I cared about. And I've continued to coach since coaching college softball. I'm a private instructor in my after my day job. I go and I do that most nights during the week, and I get to work with little girls of all ages from age 6 to seniors in high school. And so I get the full range of the experience. But I feel like I am so much better at relating to them because I've had that college coaching experience, and I've kind of seen it, through a bunch of different lenses, and it's helped me to help them in different ways.
That's awesome. And I love that you give back your time and even coach still. I'm curious what, especially the younger kids, when, you have the MPF, you have Athletes Unlimited start a whole new league and season, and then softball is supposed to be in the Olympics. What's the excitement level like for young girls who keep seeing softball come up in news and on TV?
It's so funny. I feel like I get to marry all of my different worlds when I go and give lessons at night, because I'm always asking the girls I'm giving lessons to, like, who's your favorite softball player? Tell me some players you know. Tell me their names. I want to know. Like, I want to know where they're at in terms of kind of having a finger on the pulse of the youth softball world and what they know. And then that helps me to kind of serve them better through Softball America and what we cover. And it just kind of is a cycle of understanding the growth of our game. And I think our game is evolving so quickly, as you saw with Athletes Unlimited this summer, and the product that they produced. I mean, they produced a tremendous product that has a lot of people excited going forward. But I think just the visibility of softball on a large scale right now, and especially hopefully fingers crossed with the Olympics, hopefully with that reemergence on such an international level, that's going to help our game to grow and get exposure even more. But I think just having those conversations about the state of our game today. Tell me some of the best players that you know of. Why do you like this player? What stands out about her? Just kind of having that discourse, I think, is good, because not only does it provide representation for little girls to be able to look up to these women that I didn't necessarily have when I was growing up, because it just wasn't commonplace. But it also just helps them to increase their softball IQ, which is so important in the development of young softball players.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think there is, especially in the women's side of the sports industry, there is this strong push for individual player recognition. I think that that helps maybe athletes get brand sponsorships, which only will help their leagues grow. So that's awesome. I'm curious too what you would say the state so like mentioning Athletes Unlimited and the National Pro Fast Pitch League. What's so unique I think about those leagues is that they combine so many national team players from around the world. Like the NPF is actually made up of different teams that are those national teams from around the world. And because they don't have opportunities like that in their home country, as far as just like the last, 5 years or so, what would you say the international landscape is like for softball?
I think there's so much parity right now on the international level. I think you've seen the emergence of teams like Team Mexico and Team Canada and Team Australia, but Team Japan and Team USA have always kind of been the top two. But these other national programs, even Team Italy, and just the development of those players and the infusion of even players who played college softball in the US and then now play for these national teams is really cool because it creates this visibility and this continued visibility after college. In college, softball players typically get the most visibility that they're going to get. Unfortunately, that's just the state of how things are right now in our sport. So when you have these big names then go and play at the international level, it almost continues this level of visibility that we haven't really had previously, especially since softball's been out of the Olympics now for 13 years. So you didn't really see this continuation of fame and of prestige at the next level because unfortunately the NPF right now, for as great a league as it is, and people who know and love the NPF know that it just doesn't have the same visibility that people have on the international level right now. That is. So it's awesome to see these athletes who succeeded in college then get to have the opportunity to continue this visibility at the international level.
100%. And I think it's really interesting how, like you said, it's been 13 years since softball was in the Olympics, which is like so sad. But as that, attention awareness has gone down, I feel like NCAA has really picked up. And I mean, like the World Series are just, it is called the World Series for softball too, right? Okay. Just making
It's called
sure.
the Women's College World Series for softball.
Yeah, and so I feel like it's exploded. I mean, it's just having record after record, broadcast numbers. What's that like as a former NCAA athlete? What's that like personally to see that take off?
It's so cool. I just remember like my teammates and we were kind of watching as it started to kind of soar and I graduated in 2015. So kind of the advent of social media taking off and people creating their own brands through social media. And we saw a lot of softball players at that time start to test the waters with social media and exposure and building their own brand. And so to see that kind of coincide with the I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, it's probably social media's impact ultimately on college softball created these superstars that now you're able to see on national television multiple times every year and streaming through all these different platforms. You can watch softball anywhere at any time now, which again was not the case when I was going through the recruiting process or even when I was a little girl falling in love with the game. So it's changed so quickly and it's changed for the better because there's just unlimited access to these athletes. Now the issue is when do we have this opportunity at the professional level? And fortunately Athletes Unlimited was able to provide 30 games of content this year for us to be able to absorb and enjoy. And it was great quality, lots of exciting home runs and great storylines. But now, how do we continue that momentum and how do we normalize that and get that to be how softball kind of takes off at the professional level in the future? That's the big question right now. And I think that Athletes Unlimited will have staying power. It's just a matter of getting the buy-in from the powers that be that determine that ultimately. And that comes down to resources and funding and all of that stuff. So we shall see how that plays out. But in my opinion, the product is there and it is a gold mine. So it's just a matter of time, I think, before the rest of the world feels the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think Athletes Unlimited is such a unique setup too, there is still, space and room for a traditional softball league like NPF to grow and flourish and have that kind of like, this is my team and these are my players, whereas Athletes Unlimited, it changes every week. So it's just a really cool, you know, approach to it. And I absolutely loved their like dugout video calls and like all the stuff that they were bringing to the game that makes it's a unique experience because it's softball. And like the dugout is such a cool cultural part of the sport. Yeah, I would love to just hear what you think, like what you love that is unique about softball versus any other sport.
That's a really good question. For me, it's so personal and it's so embedded in the fiber of who I am that, even if if I didn't work in softball and I didn't coach it, I would love it forever because of my experience with it. But I think that softball is a game unlike any other because you see, especially in at the College World Series, you need the championship series. You have a championship series to win. So very, very infrequently do you see teams win who aren't supposed to win in championship series. So you can really see teams start to dominate the game at our college level, at least, because you see the Arizonas of the world, you see the UCLAs of the world, you see these teams with these pitching staffs that are tremendous, and so you get to see the game on such a high level at that stage. And especially with Athletes Unlimited too, you start to see the Cat Ostermans of the world really start to dominate, because in our game does not lie. Our game, you can't really get away with much in our game. You need to be prepared. You need to be ready to go. There's such a small margin for error. It's just, it's unfair how hard it is to be good at softball. So I think, you start to see at the Division I level in these championship series specifically, and in the NCAA tournament where you need to win, 2 out of 3 or whatever it is to advance, you start to see the cream of the crop. And at the top, it is just a beautiful game to watch. It is poetic almost, just the movement, the efficiency that is required to perform at such a high level is just, beautiful to watch. So I think, soccer gets the reputation for being the beautiful game, but I think softball is beautiful game number 2 because it is like I said, it's poetic and it's a thing of beauty when it's done at the highest possible level. There are few things in the world that are more beautiful. So yeah, I think just the efficiency, like I said, the skill level that it takes to be a truly elite athlete at our game at the highest level is just unlike any other sport.
And that's what's so beautiful about the Olympics too, right? Like you might be watching a sport for the first time that you've never watched and it's like, oh my gosh, these people are at the top of their game. That is just something to behold. It really is. I was so thrilled that they were bringing softball back. And I mean, I know it varies based on locations and like venues, but I feel like that's one that they just need to make it permanent. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
I agree. I hear you. I'm right there with you. Hopefully 2028, we can get it back into the Olympic program and then it can be a staple in the Olympic program. But it's really, it's a disservice to sports fans everywhere that it's not something that they can count on every 4 years being in the Olympic program, because like we're saying, at the highest level in particular, it is a sight to behold. So, it's only doing the people who are consuming it a disservice to not have it there.
Yeah, I agree. Well, COVID threw a curveball for everyone last year. Oh, sorry, softball. Well, that's not, is that a baseball pun maybe? But what do you think, what were your favorite stories in the softball realm of last year?
Oof. Oh man. Yeah. COVID made everything complicated, but we had such an exciting shortened college softball season in 2020. Like the parity in college softball was just off the charts last year. And it just seemed like every weekend there was going to be another upset and there was going to be, another top team going down. And to me, that shows the advancement of our game, because no longer is it just a Pac-12 dominated game or even an SEC dominated game. It's anybody can win on any given day. Now, I go back to what I said before, not everybody can win a championship on any given day just because of how our game is structured, and you have to win multiple games in order to win championships against the same team. But I think that on any given day, anybody can be beaten in college softball specifically. So that was really, really cool to see. I love the stories of these athletes who are arguably past their prime, who are fighting for this Olympic dream. So you have somebody like Kat Osterman, who returned and came out of retirement to try to win a gold medal, and that eluded her in the last Olympic Games in 2008. So I think that story is a great one. I think Danielle Laurie's story with Team Canada is an awesome one. She's a mom of two girls who did the same thing, came out of retirement and decided to chase this Olympic dream of hers, which she had been to the Olympics previously, but she didn't have a great experience. And she's trying to rectify that. So I love that story. I love the Athletes Unlimited story. I love that we have this new league that has started that is really revolutionizing pro softball and pro sports for women in general. So I think at every level of the game, there are so many great stories, which is why I love working for Softball America, because we get to tell these stories. And, it's not just, one topic that we're covering. We are covering the game at all levels and covering the stories of women and girls in our sport. And to me, that's a personal experience and something that I'm personally connected to and that I care very deeply about. So, I think that we are really fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to cover stories in softball for Softball America. And I look forward to all the great stories that are coming in 2021, because that COVID is prepping people for some awesome endings. And I can't wait to see what people do with, the challenges that they faced and just the awesome stories that come out of that.
Yeah, 100%. What I know they just released the top 25 preseason for NCAA softball. What has you excited, or what do you think are going to be teams to watch?
I think the Pac-12 is going to be ridiculous this year. I think so many teams have seniors coming back from last year, and it's just like unfair how ridiculous some lineups will be, especially in the Pac. But I think in all other conferences, I expect there to be a lot of parity, because I think so many schools, especially Power 5 schools, have the luxury of bringing back their seniors from last year. So I think that the talent level is just going to be off the charts this year, with the infusion of some really top freshman athletes and underclassmen. I think it's going to be, just really, really awesome to see these talented players. But I think the storyline of Miranda Elish deciding to forego her final season of softball at Texas. She was the NCAA Player of the Year for Softball America last year, and she decided she's not coming back this year because of COVID concerns. So I think that kind of throws a wrench into the plans of Texas, certainly, and that'll shake things up a little bit. I expect, Oklahoma's always strong. They're going to be a great team this year. But, I think UCLA is just going to be a different type of beast with the return of Rachel Garcia to college softball, and, the return of Megan Faramo to an ace status, or a 1B option. If Rachel Garcia is your 1A, she's your 1B, and she would be the best pitcher in the country, on any other team. So, I think that, with their experience, I'm looking for huge things from UCLA and the Pac-12 in general, but I expect UCLA to emerge as the early favorite to win it all.
Awesome. I love it. And real quick too, I would love to, just for listeners who, this year we'll see what happens, but in years to come, traveling to go see, what did you call it? College Women's Softball Championship?
Women's College World Series.
Women's College World Series. Sorry about that. But okay. I'm sure you've been to one, and maybe as a writer versus just a fan, but what's that experience like?
Oh my gosh, it's awesome. It's like softball heaven. There's literally nothing better than the Women's College World Series. And, we were so excited for it last year in the softball community because USA Softball Hall of Fame Stadium was debuting all of these renovations that they had done. And they built up the grandstand to just be enormous. The stadium is huge now. If you build it, they will come, and it's supposed to hold a ton of people. So, I think COVID has obviously complicated things, and I don't know what it will look like in June when the Women's College World Series is supposed to happen. But I still expect there to be, a ton of magic in Oklahoma City. That's always a place where, legends are made in our sport. And, whether it's COVID times or not, I think that it's still going to be just a spectacle of an event, and something that I truly believe every softball fan should experience at one point or another in their lives. It's definitely a bucket list item that I would recommend for everybody who loves softball.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's definitely on my list of things to do. I'd love to do like the whole trifecta of NCAA championships, whether it's the Final Four or whatever the case may be. It's just like you said, it's these pinnacle moments in athletes' careers. It would just be so neat to see. Okay, last question I've got. Well, I've got two more, I guess. But one would be, because you work for Softball America and Baseball America, I hear all the time, like, make sure you don't say softball is like the girls' version of men's baseball, because baseball is a totally different sport than softball. I would love, do you mind just kind of like sharing a couple of things that you're like, yes, they're so different and here's why? Just a couple of those little things.
Yeah. So softball is a quicker game. There's no way around it. Our bases are a lot shorter. We're 60 feet. We're not 90 feet. And our game is lightning quick, especially at the college level and the pro level. So, you can't get away with the same stuff that you can get away with in baseball, in terms of, it kind of being a slow moving game. It's quick. And I think that's why people like it too, especially in our world today. You're in and out in at most 2 hours. So whereas baseball games can kind of go on for a little bit longer than that. So if you're new to softball, you're going to like it because you're in and you're out. It's not a super long experience. I think another thing is that because it's not a super long experience, we play a lot of games, and we play a lot of games in such a short amount of time. So college baseball also plays a lot of games, but I think we can play anywhere from 3 to 6 games in a weekend, especially at the travel level. Like if you're a kid, you're used to, and you play softball, you're used to playing 6 or 7 games sometimes in one weekend, and over Saturday and Sunday. So that's just kind of what you grow up doing. That's normalized because our game is 7 innings and it's quick, so you can fit 2 or 3 games into the same day. And our ball is completely different too. We play with a different ball. We play with shorter fences, but that doesn't mean it's an easier game. Our pitching mound is 43 feet away, so it's a little bit different from the boys on the boys' side. But our game is quick, like I said. So if you blink, you might miss something because that's how quick it is at the highest levels.
Awesome. Well, thanks for going through that. And then just my last question is, how can your average typical fan, what are things that we can do to help keep growing the game of softball and its popularity here in the United States?
Well, I think you should follow Softball America, because I think, we provide the stories of women and girls around the game. So I think first thing you should do is go on your social media and follow Softball America: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We provide the stories of everything you need to know in the game today. So the present and future of our game every single day. It's just a matter of normalizing that, right? Like keeping that a part of your daily routine. Like you check in on your other sports teams. You're going to check in on your favorite softball players. You're going to check in on the storylines around the game, even when it's not in season, so to speak. Even if it's in the middle of winter, there's always stories. There are always stories. There's always something going on in the softball world. And I think that's a very easy way to foster your love for it and to continue to love it even when the game is not happening. So I think expose yourself to people who cover the game, expose yourself to watching old games too. You can go on, thanks to streaming and the power of technology. You can go and you can check out some of the best games. Go on YouTube. You can go and replay old games. You will not be disappointed because it is so fun, so much fun to watch, and just the highest quality and caliber athletes that you can imagine. So, get up to speed because it is emerging and it's coming. So you're gonna know about it in one way, shape, or form soon. So might as well start now.
Awesome. Well, and we'll put all those links in the show notes. Anywhere else you want people to find you or find articles?
Sure. Yeah. So softballamerica.com, that's where you can find, all of my work, all of our work. On Instagram, you can find Softball America. You can find, I have a softball Instagram as well for the girls I give lessons to. So I post some drills and some tips on there from a coaching perspective. And then on Twitter, I'm always talking all things softball. So you can find me at Kayla Lombardo 11 on Twitter. Can't wait to chat softball with the Twitter softball community coming up shortly in just a few weeks here with college softball starting.
Yeah, yeah, it won't be long. Well, thanks again for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed it.